Okay. Yeah, so just to vocalize, so I'd like to have a place to put documentation that we generate for this project, and like where is the best place for that?
Yeah, obviously, I think the best place is in the repository because that's where people are going to look. Um, we can either put it in the README, just edit the README directly, or have our own specific one about our notes.
Hmm.
So I don't know what you want to call it. Maybe GitLab specific README, like GitLab, like README dash GitLab or something to just make it clear that these are our notes.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's been like my question with it is, do you have the existing Docker documentation, which is pretty valuable. I've read through some of it, and they talk about, like the perils of online garbage collection and such. So they do have some there's good documentation there.
Yeah, what should we do about that? Actually don't have a good answer for that right now. I haven't looked at the documentation and where we went my edit. Is it actually part of the repository or some separate repository?
Yeah, so there is some documentation that's part of the repository. I haven't done a deep dive, but there's like stuff that's like discussing like like this is like if you want to like do a merge request for online garbage collection, like please consider read write consistency, this, that, the other, and just like the README, and I believe there's an API documentation. So like as that changes, I'm not sure. Like it seems like part of me wants to say like there's a reason to have like a historical like document that's like upstream, and it would be annoying like as upstream changes their documentation to have like conflicts based off that.
Right. It's a good question. I don't have a great answer to the like I said. I think let's take a step back and look at the whole. I don't know if you read the issues where we sort of talked about the container registry. I think I linked it but basically this issue that here I linked at 62885. That one. This is sort of the initial discussion of here are all the things we want to do with the container registry.
Right.
Here's the approaches we could go, and I think forking was one of them. But there was other discussion about people's, I think Camille and Dimitri, I think, were proponents of just writing it and creating a whole new registry ourselves, right? Because they actually
Right.
didn't think it was going to be all that much work. I was more hesitant to that because I know that registry has been in use today and we use, we depend on it today. And I thought it might be a little bit more straightforward to fork it. And if we got to the point where we decided that forking it was just not worth the effort, then we could go pursue the rewriting it. If we decided that we've got to totally re-architect it. So in some ways, this is a learning process right now to figure out, as we maintain this registry and we find that we want to do all these different things, is it just architecturally not what we want and we want to actually go with the rewrite? So I think right now we're just trying to figure that out.
Okay.
You and I are
Yeah.
kind of the first guinea pigs to figure out, like, what is the registry source code doing? How do we make changes, update it, and so forth? And from what I see so far is the code is pretty well architected. So I'm
Yeah.
not terribly feeling like we need to go off and rewrite everything. But then again, if it increases our velocity and we have more people who can help out if we do rewrite it, then maybe that's a reason to do it. But as far as I can tell, the project is still chugging along, albeit slowly.
Right.
So we will have to kind of figure this out. And all the questions you have right now are really the heart of the questions. Is like, is the fork going to be workable? Right? Are we going to have to make so many changes in the documentation that it's our fork is so different now that really we can just treat the whole documentation as our own starting point, and we can totally revamp it as we see fit.
Right.
So I haven't done it. I don't think either of us has done anything that warrants a huge documentation change yet.
No.
So I think as we get to that point, we can kind of figure out, what do we need to do? What do we need to update?
Right.
Can we upstream this? Can we get their attention? If we can't, then, we may just have to own everything and just, run with it.
Yeah, and that's what I've seen with Docker upstream is there just seems to be PRs and issues that like they get so far and then they just sort of like go radio silence. Like there's one to allow like whitelisting of media types, like
Yep.
OCA media types.
Right, yep.
And there's like, why don't you not make it regexes, just make it plain list of strings? He's like, great, I'll do that. Would have been nothing.
Well, it's probably, but those are open source contributors, right? So you could
Sure.
that happens all the time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If it's a Docker employee, that's a whole different question, right? But
Sure, sure, of course, yeah. I think that's a contribution from Harbor, actually,
okay.
like trying to get it back and trying to like get upstream.
So I mean, the least we can do is try to incorporate the best ideas and try to show that we're moving quickly. It'd be ironic if that you personally could just suddenly cause the entire Docker team to realize that, hey, GitLab's moving faster than we are. But we'll have to see.
Sure.
It certainly feels like that right now, that you're making more changes than the company itself. But the company's going through a lot of right now. I think Docker Enterprise was just acquired.
Yeah, I saw that just now. I haven't really got a chance to read it.
I don't know what's going on. So anyway, it seems like the whole world is moving into like an open source Docker container. So it doesn't feel like there's a real like business value of having a closed source container registry. So Quay open sourced their source code yesterday too. So
I just saw that just now in the issue.
so like I said, we're gonna figure this out, and I think these are questions we can cross. We can cross these bridges as we come to them. I don't think we need to solve them right away, but
Okay.
what's your next question is about general direction. So it's the same idea, right? Is that
Right.
I think our scope is so large that unless we get buy-in from Docker to do all this stuff, I think we're just gonna have to take this registry and run with it. Because it feels like all the things we are doing are fundamental changes in the registry, right? Adding database support, all that
Right.
stuff. Like that is going to be really, really a big breaking change, and I don't think we're going to be able to support upstream if they're not going to help us. So
Right.
I kind of foresee it. I kind of see two paths. One of which is like we make all these changes, we upstream them, they adopt them very quickly. Second one is like we just make all these changes and we become the de facto container registry, like Go Harbor or something like that, right? So
Right.
so it's we're kind of being pioneers here, and I don't think we have any answers. Like I said, I forwarded you an email from the previous CTO of Docker. I think he obviously wants to avoid a fork as much as possible.
Right.
If you look at the things we're trying to do, it's like way out of the scope of what that current registry is doing. So unless it's basically what Docker Enterprise is doing, I think. So there may be some things internally that prevent us from working with Docker Enterprise, like open source and all that. So I think we should just do what's the best interest of GitLab and make it open source. And suddenly we get a lot of traction because we made a lot of progress on it. Then great. So it sounds like, like everything we do at GitLab, we got to be incremental here. So let's
Yeah.
continue to make changes, and then as we see like the need, we may need to kind of revisit these kind of questions. But I think you're asking all the right questions. Like we haven't crossed the road right now to say that, hey, we're going to have to completely diverge. I just think we're going to diverge significantly.
Right. Yeah. So just I guess for right now, I guess the consideration is, would we be hesitant to pursue a change that would change the architecture because it does make it more difficult to take in changes from upstream?
I don't think we should worry about that at this point.
Okay.
I think that we should do like if we need to support online garbage collection, let's do what's the fastest thing for us to make that happen. If we need to upstream that, or if they want to adopt that, we can put people on it later if there's a strong case for that. Like I said, I don't see that happening right now. So let's revisit that if that ever comes up again. But I think we should just move quickly and do what's best for supporting GitLab customers and users. And the fork is really just a means to bootstrap like these changes as quickly as possible, right? So.
Right.
It's not so much we can upstream as much as we can, but if it's like I've been trying to upstream my changes, but like I just get 0 comments on my pull request, so there's not much we can do if there's no one reviewing the code that we're submitting.
Right.
ideally we keep whatever we code, we can easily upstreamable. Like the changes are very clear, they're very portable. But
Right.
it does take work to upstream it because we've made, they've made some changes in like the Go modules dependencies, and the 2.7 branch doesn't have that, and so it's just like it does get a little complicated with dependencies and all that. But
Oh yeah.
I still feel like let's just do what we think is necessary for our internally, and if we get more buy-in, we can certainly change our course there.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you answered. Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, so I feel like I've been relying on you a lot for code review and merging. Is there someone else like just to? You seem busy.
Yeah, no, it's a good question because the only reason I came to know this code is because I've been trying to dig into a problem with the current registry, and I'm not sure how many other people internally have had a reason to look at the source code and the tests and all that. I think
Yeah.
Neil was probably the person who has. I wouldn't, he's also a busy guy, so I wouldn't want to just say, hey, Camille's also a maintainer. But I think it makes a lot of sense to put, another person or two to be able to review these changes. I don't know who that could be. Who it
Yeah.
could be. Obviously, somebody else on your team would be the most likely candidates because you're trying to move quickly on the registry. But
Right.
who is on your team right now?
So as far as Go programmers, me.
Okay.
We are we are adding a person. Should be adding a person in December. I think it sounds like. I'm not 100% sure. I'm still relatively new. I started last month on the 21st. So that's my understanding.
Okay. Well, there are people who can review Go code here internally. So
Right.
that may be the short term. We just assign somebody who has some Go experience. Like I said, Camille is probably the most likely candidate because he understands the registry really well. So
Okay.
I would nominate him as like kind of an interim until we have more people, and then we can propose like, and if you find that you need another review or two, maybe we should expand that to some of the people on the runner team because they know they probably have experience with the registry as well,
Okay.
and other people internally just interested in reviewing Go code as well in the container registry.
Right. So what would just be the best way to contact those people? Like I know with all the Ruby stuff, there's like reviewer roulette, which seems really convenient,
Mm-hmm.
but with Go, it just seems more ad hoc.
Yeah, so like I said, I think we should propose maybe a lightweight container registry maintainer program. Maybe
Okay.
just put something out there, and either like a merge request that just says, hey, if you'd like to be involved with reviewing Go or container registry, add yourself as a, I don't know, you've seen this engineering projects page on the handbook, but basically people can tag themselves as like, backend reviewers or backend maintainers. I think we should do something like that for the registry so that we kind of institute, volunteers and also people who are formally assigned. So
Right. Yeah, that makes
that would be the
sense.
way to do it. I think we can add. There's an engineering projects page. We should add the container registry to that. We should add maintainers and reviewers. You can add me as a maintainer for now, and then probably you and I as a maintainer to start, and then we can nominate reviewers. Just through a merge request, we can just say, "Hey, Camille, you're nominated as a container registry reviewer. Um, are you okay with that?"
Got it. Got it. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So that makes total sense. Um, so, are there any parts of the code that you want to point out to me in particular that have relevance, or just
Nothing on the top of my head.
yeah?
Like I said, my exposure to a lot of this stuff is just in the context of understanding how stuff gets stored in object storage. Like, that's really what I've been doing the last month, like understanding, how does a manifest get updated and how does the driver get written. So all your work is directly relevant because I've touched that stuff. There's a lot of other stuff I haven't looked at.
Right.
So it may be useful for us to start documenting like what we've learned because I don't know if there's like a development documentation around the Docker registry right now. And that may be another way for us to kind of get more contributors because people say, hey, look, GitLab has, written all this great documentation on how to understand the registry. that will help people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've got some like, it'd be nice to write down like the manual testing process with like Minio, because like there are some like, it's, you've got to, I figured it out. So might as well have somebody else, like not have to, like somebody else just be
Yeah,
able to go bam, bam, bam.
right, exactly. And I think that's probably the first place we should start. We should probably start development documentation and just jot down, today I learned kind of stuff, or like, this is the test. So
Right. Yeah. It totally makes sense. Um, so what's the deployment story? Like, how do I, we have issues and stuff, and I should, I'm supposed to mark like, hey, this is in production now. Like, how do I know when that happens?
right. Well, I think first we should, we should document like the omnibus and the. I think I linked in one of the issues, the omnibus file that you need to change, and also the registry, the cloud native images for the registry as well. And
Right.
we should document that. But then, I think is your question is like how do I know what version has actually been deployed?
Yeah. How do I know, what version is running in production?
Hmm.
And yeah, mostly just so I can like keep on top of that, so I can report back to my team like, hey, this issue is like, it's in production now. Like,
That's a good question. So the way it's done right now with GitLab CE is there is a I don't know if you've been in the announcements channels, but there's announcements when certain packages get deployed,
mm,
and it's there's a version tag and like a SHA and all that, but like it's not a very good way of knowing like exactly which container registry is being deployed. Um, what is it that we want though? What we want is either I mean, ideally we have some sort of page where we can look at of showing what version is is running right now. We probably should open an infrastructure issue, because right now the way it works is that all the registry is running in a container on Kubernetes, and in the past month, the way I figured out what version we've been actually running is I had to look up. I actually had to log into the pod and actually run the registry version, which is not the right way to do it.
no,
We
I don't want
want
to do that.
I don't know, nobody wants to do that. So what we really
Yeah.
want to do is have some way to report in like Prometheus or something
Hmm.
version is actually running. Is there a Prometheus metric for versions? Probably not. Um,
Yeah.
are there even Prometheus metrics in the Docker registry right now? I think there are some.
I think there's a couple.
So
Yeah.
that may be the first thing we do is we add metrics for like what version are you, if there's not there, and then scrape them, and then you can have either the dashboard or a Prometheus like query that just tells you exactly what's running. So I think that's the way to do it.
Okay. Yeah. Version. Yeah. Oops, that's like not the right thing. Ah. Um. Yeah. So that's good. So for bigger changes, so like if we do online garbage collection, like obviously that's something like we really want to put through um, some pretty heavy testing before it gets deployed in production. Is there like a state? I don't believe there's like a staging environment or a canary environment for the registry. Like what's the?
There is, there
Oh,
is,
there is.
there is staging. Yeah, that's how they tested out the whole Kubernetes. We have a staging.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we do have a staging and pre-production, and dev.gitlab.org also uses the registry as well. So we do have a bunch of places where we use it. So the testing part of the infrastructure side is there. I think your question is about maintaining reusability to upstream. Is that right?
Uh, oh, yeah, for the API. Yeah, it's just something that came up today. It's like, is that something like, if we have like front end jobs that are making like 4 API calls to the registry,
Mm-hmm.
should we just like, is that a goal to just like have like our like extend the API or have our own version of the API endpoint they can hit to like sort of bundle those in for our specific workflows?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, obviously the Docker Engine API. I guess the question is, are you talking about the Docker Engine API, basically the thing that interacts with the Docker command line, or are you talking about like, hey, we want to actually query, this in a certain way, and even though it's not supported by the the command line, we still want this data.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the
So
first
just
command line one is interesting because obviously we can't make any changes that will break the command line because
yeah. Well,
right? Like I think that would break a lot of things.
yeah. I mean, it would just we'd have to like release our own version of Docker command, which is not. I'm not into that.
Yeah, I don't think we want to avoid that if we can. So I would think that we extend it with a different API or a different version or something that's
Right.
very obvious that this is our extension. Um, so I would say, yeah, let's where we can just keep the existing API so it's still compatible with normal clients. We may have to revisit that. We may decide, hey, look, we really need to do something special, but it seems like shipping our own command line is going to be a nightmare. So
Yeah.
let's avoid that as much as possible.
Right. I
So
figured.
I agree. We should probably just say like, let's not. We have to have a really good reason to break this thing, right? Like, and I don't think we have one yet.
Right.
Like, if we need, for example, if we want to support, like, hey, we need an API to trigger garbage collection, right? That's going to be a specific thing that we create. Like, it may not even be a Docker specific engine API. It may be like a GitLab API that says, to trigger this garbage collection, and then, um,
Yeah. That's
right?
most. Yeah.
It's like,
Mostly, I was thinking stuff like that, where it's just
yeah,
like GitLab specific workflows to hit, like have endpoints for that.
right. Because I can see we're going to need to probably add database support to our registry, right? Like suddenly we're going to have to track all the blobs in a database and not on the file system, right? It seems like
Right.
that seems like it's a given now, given that like this is what Go Harbor does, this is what Quay does, this is what the only way you can possibly do tracking in a sensible way. You can't have it done in the file system because, well, can you? Probably. I don't I don't think so because you need a database, but maybe I'm wrong because Git
Yeah.
does do this, right?
Well, they had Git does it, but I mean it's just a different the architecture of Git's so different than like
Yeah.
it's not centralized. So um
Well, Git also doesn't work with object storage yet, right? Like if we're talking, like Git assumes everything's local and
right.
walking the file system in Git is normal, but doing that in object storage is insane, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the things I've been thinking about with the there's a issue to like improve the speed of the garbage collect command,
hmm
and that's you know I haven't done the testing yet, but my assumption is that this is like that's mostly going to be storage back independent, like almost if not 80% more. So like it's one of those things like if we do eventually switch to online garbage collection, then is it even worth like trying to speed it up because it's going to be different back
Right.
end.
How do you do it at scale? Like, well, first of all, how do you do it at scale, right? If you've got like,
Right.
you know, you got 300 petabyte. I think we got some petabytes of data in our registry right now. Like doing
Right.
doing it the way we do it now is impossible, right? You can't possibly scan every blob and figure out which ones are reachable and which ones are not. It's just like we create more data than we can scan it, right? So like this will never work unless you've tracked this information as you go, right? So um,
Right.
you do need some sort of database, whether that database is stored in like a normal database or actually like in some other back-end storage is another question. But to me, it seems like the database is the most sensible way because you can do all sorts of querying around it, right? actually figure out what's not reachable with relatively simple reference counting.
Yeah, I mean that was my first idea. It's like, well, that's you need something that has like transactions at least. It's just something that can like actually account for that data and not have like the file. It's kind of it was very surprising when I realized it's just flat files. I was like kind of taken aback.
Right, me too. I was kind of surprised that like this is what we're shipping to, because it's like really a simple, and there's lots of issues with it. So
Yeah. Well, like Docker, even locally, Docker like will just fill your file system.
yeah,
And
that's
when I first started using Docker, I was like, "This is terrible. Somebody ought to fix this." And I didn't realize I was volunteering at that
yeah. Well,
time.
sometimes the best problems you have are the ones you have to solve yourself. So
Right.
careful what you ask for, I guess. Right.
Exactly. So yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah,
Um,
so I think you're asking all the right questions. Like I said, this is pretty new ground, so none of this is set in stone, right? Like if we decided, I know that when we first discussed about what's direction we should take, I said we should probably look at Go Harbor really closely because they're doing a lot of stuff that we want. And then I think it was just sort of dismissed out of hand that like, hey, all this stuff is too hard to strip out, or it's too like. But I'm not sure if anyone actually evaluated like, hey, they've got all this great code that we can just pull out for database
mm,
tracking, all that. So I do still think it's worth spending a little time making sure that like going down this fork path is we're not reinventing the wheel. In other words, like there isn't already code out there that we can leverage to get us to this, get to the right point faster. I think we
right.
just I think you can talk to Daniel though. I think we decided to go with the whole fork because it did seem like the most you know incremental step we could take, the smallest step we could take, because we're using it today. Augmenting it seems like the least risky thing, because if we take on Go Harbor today, it's completely different code. We don't know if it's going to be compatible with what we're doing, so there's a lot of risk there. But it may be still useful to kind of look over their shoulder to make sure that hey, they've already solved a lot of things that we're going to have to implement anyway. So
Right.
like I said, you're the first person on this team to kind of focus on this, which is great. And so I hope you enjoy these kind of like open-ended, investigations, because it's still. I think you have a lot of, I think you have a lot of sway into like how we kind of move forward here. Because if you say that, hey, look, this is just like untenable. Like adding all this stuff is just completely causes us to re-architect this whole thing, so we need to either rewrite or just go with a different registry. Then I think we can evaluate that. So like I said, none of this is set in stone. It's mostly this is the approach we're going now.
Okay.
We're
Yeah.
wrong, let's revisit that. But as far as I can tell right now, we need to support the registry we have today,
Okay.
so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've got a feeling it's more exploratory than I had. Like, I figured that you guys were like, "We're doing the fork. We're committed." But like, I get that it's exploratory now. Yeah, so that's helpful.
Yeah, it's
Whatever.
explorative, but we're also fixing things that are critical, like
Sure.
right. So we've got to fix the things that are hurting us, but we also have to a longer term picture of there's 100 other things we want to add to the registry. Um, so
Right. I mean, it's an entire application.
yeah,
So it's a lot to it.
entire business, right? Too.
Right. Right. It's an entire business.
This is why your team will be growing in the next years. So.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. So yeah, I think I've got a pretty good idea of what to do going forward, at least. And I appreciate all
Okay.
that. Appreciate all your help and all your feedback
Sure. Well,
too.
I'm glad
Yeah.
you're jumping on this. Glad to see somebody else looking at this. I was actually kind of surprised somebody came, and started submitting merge requests for this, because it's like this whole project really just started in the last month or so.
Yeah, yeah. So happy to be here. Happy to help out.
All right. Welcome aboard. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, of course. We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.